What did success look like yesterday? What does it look like today? And what does it look like in the future? That is what we will be taking a look at next. Here to share his thoughts on how to make AI less artificial and more intelligent. Please welcome our final speaker here on day 3, the wonderful Adam Gorski, VP and Global CIO over at Contour Global.
When you think about, the progress in the world, it took about 7,000 years going, from 5,000 BC when the wheel was invented, and that enabled body, to move around and carry more things around and move from one location to another. And then 7,000 years later, when we were approaching the year 2000 or 20th century and so on, the digital really showed up on the horizon, and that is enabling our mind mobility. Today, you can sit with your smartphone and you can talk to anyone around the world at any time. You can see those people and so on. So again, it took 7,000 years, and the reason I want to show this one slide is how long it took to the next evolution. Now it took about, let's say 100 years when the first punch card was introduced, and then we had computers 1950s, 60s, 70s, and it was just going forward and forward. And then all of a sudden in 2007, when Steve Jobs introduced the first iPhone, or around that time, everything has changed. Everything is now available to people, or will be available in the future. Now looking at the fast pace, so here's the slide from 2005 when Pope Benedict was elected. On the left-hand side, not many lights, so people had regular cameras. And then 2007, around iPhone was introduced. And then all of a sudden, 6 years later, you have the election or choosing of the next Pope, and you can see all of those lights. All of the sudden, there are people using a lot of digital and so on. Now going to the next slide. There's going to be a picture of all of the things that probably most of you or a lot of you remember on the picture on the left-hand side. All of those devices were hardware that people used to carry around, the boom box and big camera and music players and you name it. It was a lot of devices. So what happened is actually software, data, digital eliminated all of that software, all of that hardware. And now on the right-hand side, you have a little bit of a cartoon where you have a smartphone right in the middle, and that's the suspect that's taking all of those jobs away from those hardware devices. Now going forward to the next slide or a couple of slides where so that's going to be today what's happening, and I'll show a couple of slides here. But why we have to look into the future, why it's important to reposition our companies or businesses and even our private lives. So if you look at that blue box that is around those two pieces of the slide or the chart on the right hand side, I call it digital natives, and those are the people that are about 40 years old or younger, because the generation Z ends around 2014. And then you have generation Alpha, which is not on the graph here, but those are like a 7-year-old kids, and they're going to form the future as well. But the digital natives, this is the group of people, or two groups of people together, where they don't know anything better but digital. They've been born into it when they were becoming teenagers and adults and so on. They were just living with it. It was just a normal thing for them to have. And then going to the next slide, if we look at what they're all about, so I just want to highlight a few things here. What does it mean digital native? One of the things is that they're always on, but they are always on in a different way than baby boomers and so on. Baby boomers might think that they are always on because they have a smartphone. But this generation, or those two generations, the digital natives, they are looking into having everything at any time. So during the night, they do digital business. They are always on, always connected, and so on. They want to talk to your website versus to talk to your customer service department. So that's very important for chief information officers and digital officers and so on, because they're going to go to companies that provide those services. They don't want to be transferred from one agent to another on the phone, and still things are not resolved. They want to just be on a website, on the phone, resolving the issues. And then one of the items I want to highlight here is right in the middle, going from a Build-A-Bear in a store to a Build-A-Car on an iPhone or on a smartphone. And some of you might remember, you probably took your children, to a Build-A-Bear store, and the animal would be built, there, or maybe you as a child. And today, people just want to do those things for high tech, and they want to be able, to also get quick feedback and so on. So now, let's take a look at the next slide, which is really where I think most of the companies are, even though people think that they are much farther ahead. But it's about the always on, always connected, 24/7, 365 days a year, and so on. And then all of a sudden, you look at the companies around the world, and they are working on the core, updating the system, switching to different SAP or Salesforce or whatever the system is. It's still like building the core, replacing things, going to the cloud. And then they figured, well, that's not enough. So let's make sure there are digital connectivity, and looking at the digital connectivity. So you have those two items where you have standalone systems, and you put more digital links among those systems, but it's still being in a box. So we have to step out of the box. We have to go forward and look at the transformational world. What can we do to create new business models using data, using artificial intelligence, using machine learning, using the current technologies. So if I had to guess, I don't know which companies are participating in this session here, but you are probably somewhere here between those first two bubbles. Some companies are looking at the bigger one, but they are not really concentrating their attention there, because it's all about doing the digital transformation, so-called, which is more of a digital optimization, how to make sure the systems are working and they're available online, and so on. But so it's very important to step out of the box. Otherwise, you're going to become the Kodak. And the Kodak was a very good thing years back. It was Kodak moment. But today, the Kodak moment is that you are left behind. So it's all important to go forward with digital. But so that's the past. Everyone knows what has happened, where we are pretty much. But let's take a look at the future. So on the next slide, the Internet of everything. Everything will be out there. Everything will be connected. Everything will be available to people. Technology is there, and you can confirm that. We are not just moving fast enough because it might be too expensive. So now again, the presentation has a lot of different slides, but I'll just try to highlight a few things there. And 2021, one of the things that the world was predicting, before COVID-19 happened, is people don't really want to be tied to one office. They want to work from anywhere. They want to be able to do other things as well. So that's what's happening, work from anywhere. And also, if you want to learn anything, and I teach at one of the colleges or universities myself, but today, if you want to learn anything that interests you, you can go to the biggest library, biggest university in the world, which is the digital college, which is the internet. You can find pretty much everything there. I have students that are physically in China and other countries, and they participate in the classes. Now going to the next slide in 2022. So let's see what is going to be happening this year, or maybe it has happened already. So I highlighted here brain implants and nanobots, and that's what the medical world is testing. And people will be able to fix different diseases, or the medical world will be able to do that for them. By you take a robot like a pill, and it goes inside and does whatever it needs to do, and then it gets expelled from your system. But if you look at the first bullet under the 2022, DNA as a firmware, so it's data, right? That's what scientists believe. And DNA editing used to be done outside of the human body, so you would have to take the sample and go and do it in the laboratory. You would pay $1 million, and they will put it back in your system. Now, CRISPR last year actually showed that you can do it inside your body. So you can fix different diseases. We can deal with different cancer cells and so on without taking those taking your DNA out of your system. Then going forward, what I try not to do here is just go year by year, but don't hold me to that it's going to happen by let's say December 31st, because sometimes things are moving forward faster or a little bit slower as well. So in 2024, while I'm waiting for this slide to switch, I believe, based on the research that I've done it, and different evaluations, that in 2024 we're going to have a first mission to Mars, and most likely Elon Musk will do it. He will send someone there, and person is going to get back. The challenge is that it takes 7 months to get it. And why 2024? Because those two planets are at the closest distance at that time. 2025. I believe we're going to be approaching a artificial intelligence, human level intelligence. So the machines will be getting pretty close to human intelligence, and some scientists have proved this thing as well. Those who follow, there's a company, DeepMind, called DeepMind, that Google acquired, and what they have done is they actually figured out how to play the game of Go and beat the best player and many players after. But then they told the computer to figure out how to beat the computer that's beating people, and that happened within a couple of months. So you can see the fast progress of those things. Going to the next slide, 2026, 2027. We were talking here about data. A lot of us talked about it, and the panel was discussing it as well. We are approaching the point where we'll get the 50 terabyte hard drive. And why it's important? Because the data needs to be stored somewhere. It cannot just be in the cloud somewhere without hard drive or hard disk that you can put it on. And also one of the big things that will be happening around 2027, no need to talk, transferring your thoughts to others. And actually, I believe in today's Wall Street Journal, there's an article about a person who cannot talk. There's something happened to the person after an accident, and there's a device that the person is transferring the thoughts to a device, and the device is typing the message on the screen. Moving to the next slide, 2028. You've probably seen that a lot of 3D printed items have been around, and we're going to get much deeper into the 3D printed buildings. And also, since we are figuring out the DNA and all of those sequencing, then it's a high probability that we can bring back some of the extinct species, because if you know what the code is, it's like a computer code. You bring it back and load it and make a few changes, and it should work. At least that's what the scientists are saying. On the next page, this is the big year. Typically, when the decade ends, or year ends, or century, or millennium, and so on, there's a lot of things happening. So I highlighted here and only a couple of things, because again, the time will not allow us to go any deeper. It probably would take 3 hours or more. But non-human intelligence will pass the Turing test. For those who are aware what the Turing test is, Alan Turing is one of the computer pioneers, where he predicted that at some point human intelligence will be matched by or the computer intelligence will match human intelligence, and they will have to run a test. So a person will be sitting somewhere in the backstage, and a computer will be on, and the committee will be asking questions, and the writings, the answers will be in writing. So this way they cannot recognize the voice. And if the answers are both the same or extremely close, then they will have to determine or declare that humans and computers can be as intelligent as it shows. One of the big things that a lot of scientists and people who are tracking different technologies are saying is we might get to the point where immortal software based on humans. So it might be like our grandchildren would say like my grandfather or my grandmother never backed up his mind to the cloud or internet. I call it the huma digit, because it's digitally enhanced humans. And today, you are enhanced because you have a cell phone or you have other devices, iPad or computers, and you are constantly linked, with the internet, and you get information from there. So in the future, it's going to be more about like, getting, if we can really show, which I believe it will happen, that the human brain is like software, like firmware, then it could be downloaded and could be uploaded and so on. Yeah, well, imagine that you send the avatar to another planet and upload yourself there. I know it sounds crazy, sounds unbelievable, but if you go back 50, 60, even 100 years, people thought like exactly the same way. And one of the people was Nikola Tesla, when in 1895, he said that in the future, people will have a small device. They will keep them in a vest pocket, that they will be able, to see a baseball game, talk to people in another country, see a inauguration of a president in the U.S. and so on. And isn't that true? So it happened 100 years later, but it was crazy at that time. So 2029 will be big. Also humans will not be allowed to drive on the highway. Who will have all of those cars, powered by artificial intelligence, or less artificial, but it's going to be, really, intelligent. And then going into 2030, with all of the things happening in the world, and we've probably seen a lot of it already, the depression will be the #1 global disease. Some people will not be able, to handle the speed of digital, speed of data, speed of information coming, their way. That's probably the year or around where we'll get to 100 terabyte hard drive. So it took so long to get to the first terabyte, and today we have the capabilities to go several terabytes. But then 50 was on one of the previous slides, and here is 100 in a few years later. One of the things that the prediction and looking at how the world is going forward, because after the COVID, now as we are getting to the end pandemic, end of it, then people will probably go to the office a little bit more. But then by 2030, they will realize, why do I have to go there? And I don't have to be physically in the office. I can do whatever I need to do from remote location. So it's going to be no reason not to utilize the physical office, unless you want to just go and socialize with other people and have fun, and then go back to home and work. 2031, one of the highlights among the others, robotaxis, and we already seen some movement towards that direction, where some companies are buying Teslas and other cars, and they will probably get to that point where autonomous driving will be available, and then you will have an app that will basically send a message to a first available taxi. It's like Uber today, but the taxi will not have any drivers. 2023, personalized environment. Everyone is looking for having things his way or her way. So if everything is connected digitally is available, then why not to have the same way? So if you get in a robo taxi, then the seats will adjust to your liking. If you get back in the home, the lighting will adjust. Office, if you're going to work in one, temperatures and the files will show up on your desktop and so on, or maybe Google Glass or some other glasses. So all of those things are coming and will be available to us. Maybe not exactly the day or date that it's showing here. Now moving down to 2033, digital connectivity achieved. I believe the second bullet. It's going to be a point where everyone will just live with digital. It's going to be connected 100%. And today our limitation is how quickly we can enter information into those little devices. We can consume a lot of information, but communicating it out, we are actually slower because you can probably type much faster on your computer than type, with your two fingers, or maybe one finger on the smartphone. Big thing also in a 2034 or around would be artificial doctor, because if you can have the nanobots and other devices implemented, then why not? The system will tell you, what's happening. Maybe your blood pressure is too high, and it will tell you, to take this pill or that pill, or do something different. Go outside for a walk, maybe. Self-driving vehicles will dominate the roads, and it takes about 20 years to replace or recycle the regular cars. So if you buy a car today, 20 years later, maybe some antiques will be still on the road, but most likely you will have the new cars on the road. So that's why the electric vehicles will replace the regular ones in the future. And also it's going to be more focusing on Mars as well. And again, it takes about 7 months, with today's speed. So that's the last bullet on a presentation here. So it will take 7 months, but it's going to be a big flight to Mars, because again, those two planets will be together at the closest distance. Now 2023, artificial meat. People are. I'm sorry, 2036. Artificial meat matured. So actually, several years back, Bill Gates and Jack Ma and Jeff Bezos and other people that they got together and actually started working on it. And sure, it was very expensive initiative, but they actually produced meatballs and other food as well. But I believe by 2036, the way it goes forward, it's going to be most likely happening. And take a look at the last bullet in the 2038. Those who lived through Y2K, we had that computer bug in the system where you had to deal with the dates. And I think it's coming again, but hopefully all of the systems will get replaced by then, because a lot of systems were programmed for 2039 to work until then, because when we did the Y2K, the whole thing was like, well, we still have to go back to 20th century if we need to run around historical. So they said, well, let's just split somewhere. So some systems were 2019 through 2029. So that might be another Y2K, hopefully not. Then going forward, in the year of 2039, that's the big year again. So one of the bullets here is the digitalization of everything. So this is where actually we should be able to achieve the point where humans can actually communicate without speaking, or they can probably communicate long distance as well. So today you send a text message or get on the phone and talk, but the technology will allow them to send your thoughts to other person, and the other person will receive it and respond to it. So I know it sounds unbelievable, but no, that's where the world is heading. 2040, virtual telepathy. So this is no more of a communication where you can have a feeling of the person that you're communicating with. And then 2040 or around that year, we should achieve 100% of the Internet of everything. All of the things that are important to humans, all of the things that companies are doing will be available on the Internet and so on. Sure, you will have companies here and there, smaller, maybe sections of it that will still deal the old way, as today you have still people closing books using Excel spreadsheets. And look, a few more in the slides. 2041, cases from lung cancer are predicted to spike in the New York area. Well, Hong Kong will be before that, or some Asian countries, because of the not so much pollution, but the increasing temperature of the atmosphere, and people will have issues or challenges to deal with it, and especially in big cities where you have more of like a greenhouse effect, where the heat is trapped between the buildings and so on. Global population will reach about 9 billion people. Then S&P 500, could get to 3,600. I'm sorry, 36,000, and today it's about 4,400. So you can see exponential growth there. And we will have to build a trans-global highway so people can move from one continent to another. Today it takes forever to fly to Europe, but it should be achievable in probably a couple of hours with the high-speed transportation in the future. 2024 on the next page, neocortex linked with the synthetic neocortex. So neocortex, yeah, that's where all of the thinking is happening. The synthetic neocortex is something that it's out there, the entire internet and so on. And today, we are limited by the size of our brain, and it cannot grow any bigger because it takes millions of years actually to change significantly how people look like. But with implants and constant connectivity with the entire world, then that would be achievable. So we are coming to the point where are we going to be the living dead? All of a sudden, like your body cannot live anymore, but your brain is still living out there because you are backing up yourself and so on. Maybe living in an avatar in the world. Also looking at, for 2046, they will have to raise, the retirement age, to 70. Now, when this thing was developed, and it used to be, 65 years old, no one thought, people would live, that long. So that's what it was, 65 years. Today, 65 years, it's probably the new, 85. And people are living, through 90, through 100, and will be living, much longer because we are also putting a lot of money and development into the medical world and so on. And then we'll also have to come up with a different military where most likely it's going to be fully autonomous in the future instead of using soldiers and so on. But it's all digital going forward. And then 2048 on the next page. Bionic eyes. There's a lot of people who have vision issues, vision problems, and the device looks like the piece of hardware, but you really have to have data and software behind it and linking digitally to the brain and so on. And the scary thing, but it's probably going to happen, is the last bullet: machines designing their own next generation machines. So if they're artificial intelligence, it will become less artificial but more intelligence. It will come to the point where all of a sudden computer will be able to redesign the next generation of computers. Now, computers will not take the world over, but they will be much smarter and so on. Then 2050, that's going to be a probably big break. So supercomputers matches all human brain capacity, because if you can link your brain with the internet, and it's not going to be open code that anyone can go in there, but it's going to be controlled by you. Then if today you have computers linked together and you see the power of it, that's what's going to happen with human brains as well. And then 2051, since we're going to be able to increase the speed of transportation, then it's going to take probably 5 months to get to Mars. And that's going to be a big migration, establishing a living environment there and so on. And then one more page, going to the next one, 2052. So US population will reach approximately 400 million people. And the scary thing is that people will get to the point where they will probably look into engineered babies. They will make a list of things that the baby should have, and then people will probably get to that point as well. Sounds crazy, but what's going to happen? It's probably that's what people are going to go for. Sure, it's going to be for the rich first, and maybe 50 years later, others can do it. But it seems like that's where we're heading. And then a couple of more years, here 1 billion human brains connected, by 2058 or close to 2060, and then the Mars planet will have a permanent human base. So that's all I have, here, and again, I apologize for going fast, through it, but there's a lot. It will take probably 3 hours or more if we get into like a deep discussion about every single year or round.
Yeah, absolutely. Adam, many thanks for sharing your thoughts. That is a part inspiring, a part terrifying in terms of view of the future, and certainly in terms of some of the aggressive timeframes that they kind of outlined there with regards to some of these developments. We've got a largely data and analytics-based audience here today. Many of these developments will be based around data and advances in data, driven by data. So what does this community need to do to prepare for that future? Because if there's one thing we know, that pace of change is only going to get faster.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, it's Internet of Everything, as I had it on the first slide, and, less artificial, more intelligent. So data is the only competitive advantage that left out there. So people have to really look into data, but not into data that is historical and, what you have sold to whom and how much money you got for it, but getting really, really to a advanced analytics, machine learning, deep learning, merging data from the outside, with what the company is doing. Actually, it's getting the to the point where you create new business models. Companies as they operate today, they'll have a really hard time to survive if they just keep doing what they are doing, which is the operational excellence. Everyone is trying to make it better and better and better, but they're losing focus on what's going to happen in the future. So that's why data is so important to bring it in and look at where the world is heading, because you don't want to miss that train or the boat or the airplane. So data is everything. As you've seen, data eliminated a lot of hardware, and artificial intelligence will eliminate a lot of software as well, going forward.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. Maybe just one quick question from me before we wrap up here. We're almost out of time. But I kind of want to dig into this idea of AI, artificial intelligence. You've talked about making that more about the intelligence part rather than the artificial part. So what are your kind of key recommendations on how to focus on the human in all this development?
Well, because at the end of the day, people are looking for information from any place on any device at any time, and it has to be for them, so to those who need it, but it has to be before they know they need it. So that's where that intelligence is. If I know, let's say that I'm going to develop a cancer 10 years from now, then I can take steps to do something. If I know that my business is going to go out of business because going forward, people are going to be buying less and less of the products that I'm making, looking at what the generations are doing, maybe looking at the generation Alpha that is 7 years old right now, then it will help me to prevent from disasters in the future, as Kodak experienced and others.
So moving towards much more of this predictive type future, yeah.
Well, it's predictive, it's advanced, it's whatever you can think about, but it's not just the internal data. The importance is getting the data from the outside and merging it and finding trends and correlations. Human beings cannot see correlations easily. You need computers, you need software, you need analytics to do that.
Wonderful stuff. Adam, many thanks for sharing your thoughts here today. Really appreciate it. Fascinating stuff. Interested to see how many of those predictions hit the mark. I won't be keeping count, but well, maybe we can catch up in a few years' time and see how we progressed.
Yeah, I'm keeping tag on it. So, a few years down the road, I'll show, what has been accomplished and what else, has been moved or maybe pulled forward.
Yeah, it will be lovely to catch up with you then. Adam, many thanks for joining us here today.
Thank you.